Hello everybody and welcome to NorCal Slot Car Scene. I hope everybody's having a great holidays and I wish everybody a Merry Christmas. Recently, I made the trip from Sacramento to Southern California to attend the Electric Dreams 2-hour Christmas Enduro. I prepared two cars for this race, the Toyota that I've been racing normally and a brand new Gunston Porsche 956. I chose the Porsche and the Toyota because they have different guide to rear axle differences. The Toyota has a longer distance and will be more stable in faster turns, and the Porsche should be better in tight corners. In testing at Electric Dreams, the Toyota would handle the kink coming onto the main straightaway a little bit better because it's a faster corner, but the Porsche was faster over the rest of the racetrack, and it was about a tenth of a second faster overall. So I chose the Porsche to be my primary race car. In preparation for the race, I did a video on the parts I'm going to replace based on the rule set for the Electric Dreams Enduro. In that video, I went into detail on the specific parts and why I chose to replace them. You can see that video in the link above. So now let's get into the details of the setup for the Porsche. I installed the slotted wood guide and put the car on a setup block. The slotted wood guide fit perfect with no spacers, and I had the perfect ride height. In a previous video, I showed you how to solder the lead wire to the guide, but during the practice session, one of those broke, so I went back to my tried and true method of using the NSR ferrules and NSR lead wire. I anchored the lead wire to the chassis with silicone adhesive. This allows you to create a loop with the lead wire as it goes to the guide and creates that springy effect that springs back and makes the car much easier to marshal. The most important component in a competitive slot car is the rear tires. For this car, I chose the Slotit aluminum 15.8 diameter air wheels and NSR 5206 Super Grip tires. To prepare the rear tires, first I glued the tires to the wheels, and then using my tire truer, I turned them to a diameter just over 19 millimeters. After this was done, I massaged NSR oil in the tires 3 or 4 times a day for 10 days. I built 2 sets of tires like this, and they were ready to go on the Porsche and the Toyota. I mounted the Trude tires on the car, and the 19 millimeter overall diameter gave me the ride height of 1 millimeter that I was looking for. In the front, I used the Slotit Zero Grip tires and set the tires so they were about 1 to 2 thousandths of an inch off the track surface. The next step in tuning is the motor pod. The float of the motor pod can make quite a difference in the handling of the cars, and since this race did not allow any lead ballast, it was even more critical to get the motor pod float just right. After practicing on Friday, I found the optimal setup was 3/4 of a turn out on the front motor pod screws and 1.5 turns out on the rear motor pod screws. Strapping tape is used to dampen the motor pod movement. It allows the motor pod to rock side to side, but limits the amount of fore to aft movement in the pod. The rules for this race did allow you to add the slotted tungsten weights in the magnet pockets. So I put one in the front magnet pocket and another in the back. In practice, when the car was running pretty good, I actually took out the front weight to see what would happen. And the car got a little bit tippy, so I put it back and left it for the rest of the weekend. Once I was happy with the way the car was handling, it was time to work on the gearing. This race allowed open gearing, so I definitely chose the aluminum hub gear over the brass hub gear. It's half the weight, and it definitely picks up the acceleration of the car. For gear ratios, I kept the stock 9-tooth pinion gear on the motor and started testing different size crown gears. I tested a 23, 24, 25, and 26-tooth gear, and finally settled on the 23-tooth gear, as that gear turned the fastest lap times. The downside of the aluminum hub gears is they require constant lubrication. My local hobby shop had a white grease that worked extremely well and stayed off the gear and wasn't thrown off during use. The last thing I did in assembling the car is change the body screws. I normally use the standard Slotting Plus screws you see here on the left, but they have come out in the past, and I didn't want to have to glue them in place. So I changed to the Slotit Plus Carrera size guide screws, which are just a bit bigger and a much tighter fit and perfect for a 3-hour enduro. So how did the car look after the race? Here's a picture of the motor and drivetrain. You can see the grease definitely stayed on, and I had no problem with the aluminum hub gear. The tires were perfect. After 3 hours of racing, plus a full day of practicing, probably about 5 hours, this set of tires looks perfect. The track at Electric Dreams is very clean, so there is minimal tire dust on the inside of the body, even after the full 3 hours of racing. With the help of my co-driver, Baba Hooley, we were able to win the race, so the time and preparation that went into this car was definitely worth it. Thanks for watching. This is Jim Rose with NorCal Slot Car Scene.